About a year ago, I started to really come to terms with the fact that I'm a stress eater. When I get stressed out massively, I will sometimes, look at me trying to save face there. I will turn to food. If I am massively stressed out, I will turn to food. That wasn't always the case for me. I used to be the opposite of that. When I got stressed out, I actually couldn't eat and food would make me nauseous. But something, I don't know, I think it's, turning 40, starting to get closer to 50, maybe COVID, working from home. Yeah, it's funny now that you say those things out loud. It's like, oh, it's so obvious that when I would get stressed out, I would turn to food, and I wanted to start figuring this out. And at the time I was trying to figure this out, my life was really stressful. And I started doing things like, what is it about stress eating? Why do people do this? I know it can't just be about grit and self-discipline because it's obviously serving a purpose of some sort. And I found myself digging into Harvard University had some articles, which I like the Harvard University articles because they're that nice balance of being able to trust that this is probably a reputable place that's not really going to sell me a potion powder or product or the next latest and greatest fad. Yet the articles they publish are accessible enough that they don't get so lost in the mire in detail of, the minuscule mitochondria and, all these little teeny tiny details that you end up going, but what am I supposed to eat? So anyhow, it looks and appears that, according to the science we have today, that when humans get stressed, that whole cortisol that plays into the whole piece, going for a fat and sugar actually gives the body feedback to help dampen the stress response. The reason I'm going to say is it appears that, as opposed to proclaiming it as if it's true, is because I'm wanting to be the best scientist I can be, even though I'm not a scientist at all. I want to be the best scientist and say, according to this research that I was reading about, that seems to be that when we are totally stressed out and we eat, it legit physiologically helps us to feel better. It serves a purpose. And so to say, I'm just going to, when I'm stressed, I'm just going to just not eat. I'm just going to rely on grit and self-discipline and white knuckle it. It's like, I know that's not reality. And I know I don't want that to be reality. I want to be like, oh no, I'm better than everybody else. I am a superhuman, right? We all are superhumans. But let's break this down so we don't have to be as much superhuman in everything and we can actually enjoy our lives more. So I knew that. And I knew for me, there are some things I could do to help with stress other than food, like going for a walk. But when you live in Seattle and you look out and you can just the rain is coming down and it's cold and maybe it's windy and blowing sideways. And it's just that's not going to really help my stress. Of course, sometimes I would go and walk in the rain in the dark anyway, because that's just kind of how I am. But I had this really interesting experience around stress and stress eating last year. So last year, I went on my first ever 8-day full week solo vacation where I unplugged from work, unplugged from everything. I, had other people teaching Couch to Active classes. I wasn't taking any personal training clients. I wasn't even checking email. I was completely unplugged because I've gone on a lot of trips before solo. A lot of solo travel that's been work related, or I go to a destination and I work from that destination. But this was my first, I am going to completely unplug. And I did it during an incredibly, horribly stressful time in my life. Last fall, 2022. Really stressful time in my life. Went by myself and I went into nature. I actually went to the Columbia Gorge, and I know if you live in Seattle, when you think of the gorge, you think of the Gorge Amphitheater. And if you live in Hood River and Portland, you know the real gorge. is the Multnomah Falls corridor. That's the real gorge. Crown Point, Joaquina Falls, Horsetail Falls, Ponytail Falls, Bridal Falls, all that. You know, that's the real one. I went down there. It was only a few hours away from home. I booked myself this sweet little cabin right by Bridal Veil Falls. So right across from Bridal Veil Falls is this historic cabin that has two other little teeny tiny cabins, and it's gorgeous. It's the Columbia River is this massive, beautiful river. The Bridal Trail Falls in and of themselves are just, oh my gosh, I should look it up. A couple 100 feet tall falls that are, quarter mile away from the trailhead to get to. And just hearing and feeling the power of the falls and being in nature and being absorbed by the sound and the spray of the falls coming onto the skin. And it just feels so good. And the little cabin I rented was literally a little cabin in the woods. And it was actually really nice, but it was a cabin. It had a little bathroom and a bed and windows that looked into the forest. And that was it. There was no cell service even there. There was no Wi-Fi. There's electricity and running water and a shower. That was it though. That was it. And I spent the first half of the week there. And when I was in the cabin, I would just hang out and absorb nature. And then during the day, I would walk to the waterfalls and walk around. I'd people watch. And I noticed something. A couple of days in. First of all, I didn't pack a whole bunch of food with me because I didn't want it to be about food. And I was stressed out and I needed to just get out of the house. And and I knew I could go buy food wherever I wanted to. It wasn't super close and nearby, but and I also knew my room didn't have a fridge in it. So all those different things, I didn't have a lot with me, but I did have a cooler. But what surprised me, and this was my sober trip also, I didn't pack alcohol, like nothing. I was like, this was not the week for me to numb. My stress level plummeted because I have nobody I have to care for. All my stresses and worries of the world were hundreds of miles away. I could decompress. I was spending time just being in and with nature. I had no agenda. I had no reservations for anywhere I had to be. My stress level was 0 compared to what they had been. I was not setting an alarm clock. I was going to sleep early. It was fabulous. Here's the aha that came though. As I was day 2 or day 3 into this trip, I was hanging out at I was hanging out at the Bridal Veils Vista, right across the highway. There's this really cool paved trail. You could even take a wheelchair on it that has vistas of the entire Columbia Gorge. So you can see, down the river and the basalt cliff edges. You can see Crown Point, which is a really neat vista place, which I spent time at too. You can just see hundreds of miles, well, not hundreds of miles, but felt like hundreds of miles. You could just see forever. You could hear the trains go by. It was just a really neat vista. And I would spend a lot of time just hanging and just being there. And I had this aha. I was like, wait a minute. Back to the story of stress eating. I wasn't hungry at all. The 3 days I was there, I hadn't let myself be hungry. I let myself eat essentially what I wanted to. Now, I didn't have a whole pile of crap food in the room there, easy access. So, I set myself up for success that way. I ate less during that trip. I ate less than half of what I normally ate in given days. And I was abso-freaking-lutely totally fine. Totally fine. I wasn't hangry. I wasn't snacky. I wasn't feeling deprived. And I thought, oh my gosh, there it is. There it is. I had experienced the peace of when you are not stressed out completely. It is so much easier to manage what and how and when you eat. It's so much easier to keep the calories in control, to eat healthy, to eat in a way that actually serves your body. I hadn't gone there for the intent of having this big aha. I went there just to escape, decompress, and try to keep myself from having a nervous breakdown. That's why I really went there. But it was amazing. It was an amazing piece of like, wow, this whole stress thing, it is real. And here's the thing. I see myself as a really strong human being, a real strong person. I know I am. And I even have had a bunch of friends recently be like, wow, Lynn, you are such a strong woman. My response nowadays is like, yeah, but I'm tired of being strong. I just want to stare at a wall for like, a month. I'm done being strong. So anyhow, I digress. But for me to have that experience of like, wow, my life was more stressful than I had realized it because I rely on that. I can do it all. I'm strong. This isn't going to break me. I'll make it through. I'll conquer. And I always do. And I always will. And I will continue to until the day I die when I'm like 110 years old someday, which I've decided I'm going to live to be 110, just so y'all know. Maybe I just made that up right now. Who knows? We'll see. But not being stressed out and experiencing not being stressed out was such an eye-opener for me. And what the reason I talk about this and the reason this feels important for me to share to you is because I want you to think about yourself in your own life. If you find yourself stress snacking, if you find yourself stressed, or maybe you're like, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. Pause and really ask yourself, when was the last time you really felt relaxed, really didn't feel stressed? Because there's a good chance you're way more stressed out than you realize you are, which is contributing to some of this stress snacking that's going on, which is not a good person, bad person thing at all. It's not a grit or no grit or self-discipline or lack of character thing at all. It's just a matter of fact. When we're stressed, we got more cortisol in our body. That cortisol helps, activate the whole process of converting the glucose in our body to fat on our body. It's just really the train going in the wrong way. So if that's you, I want you to get super duper realistic. Just pause right now and ask yourself, is my life really stressful right now? Is my life really stressful right now? Ask yourself that right now. You already know the answer. I don't even have to say it twice, but I'll say it a third time. How stressful is your life? Yeah. Now ask yourself, can I do something now to begin reducing the stress in my life? Now, this is not a blame, good, bad, right, or wrong answer. This is you get to radically own your own life, take accountability for your own life, and really, truly own your own life here. So regardless of the answer, don't try to guess what the right answer is. The only right answer here is the right answer for you. Are you going to do something to help make your life not so stressed out? Now, some of that is will, some of that is skill, some of that is willing, some of that is able, some of that has nothing to do with that. So, for example, maybe you just got a cancer diagnosis. Yeah, that's super stressful. Are there things you can do to help alleviate the stress around that? Yeah, of course. But as being diagnosed with cancer and going through cancer, no matter how many mind things you do to help overcome that and try to, not be as stressed out, that is a more stressed out life and situation than if you have a completely clean bill of health and you're on a vacation like I was in the Columbia Gorge. Completely different thing. So give yourself some grace and just be a realist here. Be really, really pragmatic here. I'm all about emotions and I'm doing my best to get more and more in touch with my emotions. But right here now, we just need to be a pragmatist here and just be a doctor of our practitioner of our own life. So if there's nothing you can change about what's causing you stress, then you have a big job to do. If nothing's going to change, at least not right now, your job is to make peace. Your job is to accept and quit banging your head against the wall and fighting it. Your job is to accept your reality and say, yep, this is my reality. This is causing me stress, but I choose to do this. I've chosen this, or I legit don't have a choice in it, and I just have to deal with it. So I need to do my darndest to make peace. Now, I know that is huge work, which can, include having to bring in a circle of friends, having to bring in therapy, having to get all kinds of self-help books, having to, you're on the path to try to figure it out, try to change it, try to make that shift. But for now, you are going to be stressed out. The reason there's nothing wrong with that is because life has periods that are really stressful. And sometimes we make our own stress, and sometimes the stress comes to us, and sometimes it's both. And it's all okay. It's life. We're experiencing life. Now, if that's not you and you're realizing, you know what, I've been really stressed out about things, but I really think I can manage this better. I really can figure out how to be not as stressed out. I really can help get my life to a place where I can accept things happen, and life can be hard sometimes, but maybe I don't have to stress out about it, and which causes me to, go down that rabbit hole of stress snacking. If that's you, then start making that plan of how to get yourself there, how to get yourself to a place that isn't so darn stressful. That's where I am today, and that's why it's a whole lot easier for me to be preaching about it now. I think it would have been a lot harder, a year ago, 9 months ago, for me to be talking about, stress. I think right now, where I'm just barely on the other side of it, I found myself in a spot where I've realized, wow, my life is pretty simple right now. I run this business. I've got my son. I, have very little responsibility outside of those two things. I have a lot I can do to control and manage my stress. I've gotten a lot better at building boundaries so I can say yes and no when I truly want to say yes and no. I've gotten better at really having honest dialogues with individuals. So my life is just more integrity. What I think, what I feel, what I say is just more in integrity than it's ever been in my entire life. And that's really helped me a lot with the stress of life. So there you go. Are you able or going to do something about that stress? Go for it. If not, you're going to work to make peace with it. And just know that stress is a part of life. And maybe you're more stressed out than you thought you were. And maybe you too need to go on a Columbia Gorge waterfall week in nature to just breathe in nature and do nothing and realize, wow, it's actually a really, really great thing. So there's your homework. Take a good solid look at your stress. And in a few weeks, this is spring of 2023. In a few weeks, we are going to have a workshop with Couch to Active around stress. I think, I don't know if we're going to call it stress eating or stress and snacks, or I'm trying to think about a more positive way to phrase that. But I think it's going to be in late June, probably, is when this workshop is happening. So take a look at your calendars, head on over to couchtoactive.com, check out when that stress eating thing is. And in that workshop, we're going to look in more detail about how our hormones can play a huge role in stress eating and different tactics and mindset activities you can do to help with that stress eating piece. That'll be coming up as we all learn in this journey together. Alrighty, friends, I hope you have a great rest of your week. And in a few days, I'll report out my next, I think it's, week 02 of my weight loss journey. Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, head on over, couch2active.com. See you there. Bye-bye now.